Hello, everybody. How you doing out there today? It's Doc Kane coming at you from Kobe, Japan, on the podcast Marketers Who Can't Market. It's May 31st, 2021 or 2021. I'm having a hell of a time today. I'm hot today, actually, in Kobe. It's the change in seasons here, and that means that I can no longer wear my light pants. I need to transition to all linen because just taking 10 steps out the door turns me into a foreign person for sure. People don't sweat here in Japan. It's a very interesting thing. There is some science behind it, actually, but that's my predicament. But it was a very nice, beautiful day today. I went out and did some shopping, some spices. What do I need? What am I missing? What is it that I don't have at home that my wife would like to have? What kind of surprises can I dump in her snack box? Data, right? That's what we're talking about today. Data. The more we know about what we need to know, the better decisions we can make, right? And this isn't anything new. Everybody knows that data is important, particularly these days. And if you're a marketer and you're listening to this podcast because you're looking for a couple new ideas here and there, or you're stuck on something and you want to commiserate with me because I'm always stuck on something, then you're in the right spot. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about data. And I have some interesting stories maybe to share related to that. But I want you to basically think about how much data is all around you. And I think people are kind of afraid of data. If you consider yourself a certain kind of marketer usually, I'm in the words side of things, or I'm on the numbers side of things. And rarely do people kind of cross back and forth. And that's a shame because, most people classify sales and marketing as two different departments, but within marketing, there are these kind of like spheres as well. And the more we know as professionals about what our peers do, the more we know, right? The better we can be at our job. And if we ever go out and try and do our own thing, then you really do need to know this sort of stuff. And so, if you're more along the word side of marketing, maybe even the operations side, it behooves you to be aware of what's happening in the data space, but more importantly, to recognize that it's not that scary, right? It's everywhere. As I mentioned at the beginning, right? Like I'm just going out to the grocery store is an example of me being aware of the data for my home, right? What is it that we need? What's in the refrigerator and what's not in the refrigerator? If you have a handle on that, you can do a pretty good job of things. Even just one little thing, right? So it's important to know. Today, part of what gave me this idea today, and I've thought about this before, but I had this this occasion towards the end of class today with a student, and this particular student is, so I teach English here in Kobe, and I teach at the basically college level, Semongako, which is like kind of a vocational school, and the kids are they have way more English than they believe they do. I have far less Japanese than they do, and yet they feel like they can't do anything, and it hampers their belief in themselves, and it translates into a lot of anxiety for a couple people. Every year there's always a few students who really kind of can't even get a word out. And despite having, had like 8 years of English in junior high school and high school, and now 2 years of English, scattered English in this vocational school. And even when they're learning when they're younger, I mean, it's the English education system here in Japan is not perfect, and there are certain inadequacies. And if you're a student who struggles, then you struggle even more as a result of that kind of lack of good training. But this particular student was in she was in a grammar class that I taught last year, and this year she's a second-year student, and she's in the hotel class. So she's learning about hotel vocabulary and scenarios and doing role playing and things like that. And part of what the kids do is they go through pre-written role plays, and they start to develop a certain knack, although it's quite rehearsed for language that they might use. And this particular girl I've known for 2 years quite well, and she's come a really long way, but she's still very nervous about things. And today she had forgotten her assignment that she had to basically turn in to illustrate that she knew how to have this certain kind of conversation with me. And she was all done except she needed this one thing, and I wanted to help her go home because some students had already left, and she was kind of bummed that she forgot this piece of paper that she had already turned in to me. So she forgot it, but she did the work already apparently. So I thought, okay, well, let's go in the corner here and just sit down, and we can role play just off the cuff, right? And she thought that there was like no way in hell that she could do that, right? Absolutely impossible. And she did indeed have like a bear of a time getting through it and couldn't come up with anything to say at all. So she just kind of sat there and and struggled and struggled and struggled and thought. She was thinking like, what do I say? Uh, and that like thinking, the initial thinking took maybe 10 or 15 seconds. I didn't leave her on the hook for a really very long time. So I started to talk about. So I said, okay, well, you have a bag here. One of the scenes that they go through is talking about a customer's bags. Are these your bags? Are these all your bags? How many do you have? Is that blue one yours? Yeah, it is. And it's a very basic scene, right? So I took this bag off of her desk and I said, look, just ask me something about this bag. It doesn't even have to be about hotel language. Just ask me anything about this bag that I now have in my hands that is your bag. This bag belongs to you, right? So you know the bag. Ask me some questions about the bag. And this is where she just kind of froze and she couldn't get anything out of her head and anything out of her mouth. And I was prompting her, is this, what is, trying to get her started, and she just really couldn't get there. So I played around with a little bit, and I gave her some examples and allowed her to hear me speaking questions and answers in a mixed version of English and Japanese, so she kind of was clear as to what was being asked of her. And then I said to her, "This is probably like maybe I don't know, at least 10 minutes or more. This episode is going on." And I'm being very patient with her, and she's actually being very patient as well, but she can't get herself to kind of get the damn words out. And so I said, let's do this. If you can ask me any one question about this bag, then you can go home. I'll mark you as having completed the assignment, and that'll be it, right? And I said, you can ask me anything about this bag at all. And she said, can I ask you something that you already said, right? In a kind of broken English, but that's what she asked me. I said, of course, right? Sure, absolutely. So she again took a while to get this question out, but she asked me, what color is your bag? So it was a perfectly formed question, and the grammar was great. This is, believe it or not, something that still students struggle with. Many students would ask, what color you bag, right? Or what color is you bag? Or they might just say, color is your bag, or color is you bag. She had a great sentence. It was perfect. And so I was like, great, you're done. You did it. Go ahead and go home. You're all caught up. And then as I was walking home, I thought, I was trying to think about what I might want to talk about today, and this story was kind of ringing in my head. And I realized that what I was doing with this student was I wanted her to just get one thing done, right? I wanted her to feel as though she could accomplish this particular task that she was struggling with. And I wanted to feel like I had some sort of awareness as to where she was in her growth, right? Last year she just wouldn't talk at all. So she's talking now, and she speaks perfectly fine Japanese and has friends, and she's a normal kid, but she's really tongue-tied when it comes to English. But I needed that like data point. I realized that that's exactly what that is, right? It's a data point so that I can help her move forward, and she has a data point of her own that she's certainly not thinking of in that way, but she has a data point of her own as well that she can leverage to move forward, right? This is data. And it's super important. So I know now where she's at, and I know where I can keep pushing her, where I can't push her, and so forth and so on. Data is everywhere, right? So if you're afraid of it, don't be afraid of it. If you're pregnant and you have a baby, or you know someone who has a baby, what's one of the first things that you know, other than it being 9 months, which is data? You want to know when the baby's born, if it's healthy, and what gives you some indicator of that is how much does this baby weigh, right? So anyone who asks you, oh, how much did the baby weigh? They're doing the same thing. They're trying to evaluate the health of the baby, believe it or not, right? Because it's a data point. Everything is data. And if you are in marketing, if you're a solo entrepreneur, I'd like you to pay attention to it. If you're a solo entrepreneur, here's a few things that you can take a look at, especially if you're doing online marketing, right? The first kinds of things that you can get a handle on with regard to your business is the data rather associated with your website. So things you want to know, you want to have a handle on. Don't get lost in like Google's search console that much, but it is valuable. The first thing you should really get a feel for is how fast or slow is your website. These days, Google is cracking down on websites, and because most of us have used page builders to craft a website because we're not designers, we've unwittingly unleashed this behemoth of slowness, of sloth into our websites. They're so slow, and you probably don't even know it, especially because you're probably using your website your desktop to check your website all the time, and it feels like it loads fine. And it loads fine because you've got cache on your machine and all sorts of other things. But if you use something like Google's speed test software, or you use a tool called GTmetrix, which are vastly different in telling you how you're doing, you're going to start to see problems. And you'll be able to find a way for you, or you'll be able to find a data point for you to work on, right? That's one thing. So speed. Google Search Console, you should absolutely be in. You should have a setup on analytics as well. Check it every day, right? You don't dive too deeply in there, but what will happen is once you set it up and you keep creating content, you'll start to see people visiting your website and click-through ratings and impressions and things of that nature that will tip you off to areas of your business that people are they're not necessarily looking for you, but they'll be typing something into Google, and Google will serve up your content to them, thinking that you might be able to help them based on what you've written about. And you probably will have no idea about some of these things, or you won't know the variations of search phrases and things of that nature. And it will tell you, and then you can tailor your content for that sort of thing. That might seem obvious, right? But when I worked at RevenueWell, for example, this dental software company that I was marketing communications director at for about 5 years, manager for about 5 years, we didn't do any of that. I think we might have had an account, and occasionally we went in there, but it was so far off of our radar that we didn't pay attention to it at all. And we just were too busy. There was only one of me. I was basically the marketing department, aside from the founder, who was a marketing guy, for years. And I was writing, so I didn't have time to do any of that, even though I wanted to. And there's tons of information in there. I wrote so many articles there. I can't imagine how beneficial it would have been to spend more time in Search Console. So take a look at that. So those are two things with regard to your website. If you're also running a small business, you want to have a handle on your leads, right? So how is it that you acquire leads? Measure that. What sort of outreach do you need to do to kind of get someone interested? How many times do you need to do it? What sort of platforms are you using to do it? It's all a numbers game, right? How many people do you need to get into the funnel to see them drop out of the funnel? How many stages from the top to the bottom do you need to have? How many emails in that particular stage? how many phone calls, how many da, 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 da. You have to map it all out, and you have to know. And you'll start to see weaknesses and strengths when you do that. It's super, super important, right? Even silly things like phone call length. Like if you're doing initial outreach, um, and you're just dialing for dollars and picking up the phone and calling people, you want to know how many phone calls can you make in an hour. I mean, this is a very critical data point, and every salesperson knows this. But if you haven't worked in sales and you're trying to drum up sales, that's one thing you have to know, because you have to know like how much time in your day you can afford to do that, right? And if you do that sort of thing for a week or 2 weeks, measure your sales effort, you'll know very quickly whether or not you can do it on your own. Because if you have to spend so much time doing that to get a client, and you can't do the other stuff that you have to do, which is the biggest problem for many small businesses, then you know, okay, hell, I got to hire somebody. I got to get an intern in here. I got to do something. And don't think that you can't do that. Like I had, when I started my communications business way the hell back in 2004, 2005, I had interns working for me, right? I mentioned it before. College kids. I had a kid, I taught him how to cold call. He was great. He was petrified. He was absolutely petrified, but he was damn good. And there's a beautiful thing that happens when someone has zero idea as to how to do that, and you kind of push them. He wanted to do it because I asked it of him, and because he wasn't a sales guy, it came off very well. He got lots of introductions for me. It was really cool to see. So these are some things that you can measure, right? If you're a marketing team member, then you are probably sectioned into, rather your role is probably somewhat different, and you're maybe wanting to think about something beyond Google Search Console. Maybe you're thinking about data visualization. Maybe you're thinking about business intelligence software, or you're not aware of it yet. And now that you've heard these terms, you should be looking into them, right? So there are free versions of some of these tools, and some of them are extremely expensive, right? Sometimes your libraries will have these. If you're in a master's program, or if you're taking even just night classes, which I would encourage you to do, you often have access to the library and all the beautiful things that come with access to a university or college library, even a community college library. And these days, a lot of libraries have networked access to tools. So in the old days, it used to be like your library had LexisNexis, for example, or it didn't. These days, most of these places have access to this, especially state university systems and joints like that. Even local libraries have some of these things. But you can play around with tools like Tableau. You can look into Microsoft, maybe your company could benefit from Tableau or Microsoft Business Intelligence software, or Oracle BI, or any number of tools that are out there that allow you to see what's happening in your company. Now, my bet is that if you work in a company that's, I would say, no more than 25 or 50 people, you probably don't have anybody doing BI, especially if you're not a software company. If you're a software company, this kind of role might exist. But if you're not, I can pretty much guarantee that nobody's doing BI, even upwards of 100 plus people. People it's off the radar of many businesses. But it's super critical. So you can carve out a cool role for yourself if you start to show some interest in this. And what will happen is, because this is something that most people will feel is too difficult to get a hold of and expensive, they won't know how to help you get the skills if you want to learn how to do this stuff. So you should do what a guy did that I used to work with. He just learned on his own, right? And this is the best way to do anything. But he wanted to gravitate from graphic design into computer programming, and then he developed an interest in BI, and he wanted to get into that. So he just started doing it on his own. And at that point in time, the company had some tools, and he probably was able to play around in them. But if not, you can do what I just suggested. You can go to the library, you can download free versions of some of these. Tableau you can get into for free, at least for a little while. If you're an educator of some sort, even if you're like, teaching anything, like if you're an adjunct professor, which is another cool thing you should do if you're a learner and you want to kind of give back to the education community, you can get free licenses for many, many software tools because you're an educator. And you don't even technically have to use them within the classroom, even though they're designed for that. But you can learn and leverage that knowledge and the skill set that you're then gaining at your place of work to transition into another role, or to maybe add that on top of your current marketing role so that you can get more money, or you can get whatever, maybe more staff. If you're like a manager maybe and you start to develop a Jones for this, maybe you can illustrate to people above you that you'd be better off doing this sort of work and maybe managing some people underneath. I don't know. There's a million permutations of how this thing could work. But it's very, very critical to businesses, and lots of small businesses miss it altogether. But data is important, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I will link a few things up below, and maybe some further details on maybe how to get some of these licenses and things of that nature. I'll have to play around with it. But I just wanted to kind of point that out. Be thinking about data. The world is moving to numbers, right? Words are everywhere, but even AI is starting to write words. They still need editors. My role as an editor is probably still safe, but who knows what will happen in the future. By the way, if you are a writer, because I'm often talking about writers, your data is words per hour, words per minute, words based on different kinds of things that you're writing. It's going to take you different amount of time to write a press release as compared to a marketing communications piece, as compared to a blog post, as compared to social media stuff, and your rate should differ based on all that stuff. And don't forget to throw in transportation and research and project management and everything else, and then you'll be able to charge an amount of money that allows you to make a profit from the work that you're delivering. All right, folks, that's all I got for you today. I hope you are having a beautiful day. Please reach out to me if you're interested in being on the podcast. I don't care if you live in Japan or Timbuktu. Is that still something people say? You could live anywhere, and if you can speak with me in English, I'd love to chat with you about what it is that you do. And it doesn't have to be strictly about marketing. It can be about your business, what you've learned, what you've struggled over, what you've failed to accomplish. But the skew is generally sales, marketing, that sort of stuff, right? Maybe you're a student, you're not yet working, and you're looking at internships, or you're in an internship. That works too. I'll talk with anybody who's got a story to tell. All right. So we'll catch up with you tomorrow. Thanks again. Time to take out the dog. Got the podcast done a little earlier today. I'm happy about that. Peace out. Have fun. We will catch up with you tomorrow. Oh, I forgot. I always forget this. Subscribe. Like. Go ahead and like. Do the smash it. Smash it, they say. Smash subscribe. Hit the notifications button. If you're too lazy to come back tomorrow, YouTube will tell you. All right. Peace out. See you later. Doc Kane from Nihon Hustle in Kobe, Japan. See ya.